In this video, we'll examine one of my favorite gods in Norse mythology, Loki. This demon, to no surprise, has been in multiple Megaten games and has made an impact on this franchise in many ways. I'll explore Loki's Norse mythological background, their impact that they've had on Megami Tensei, and inspirations for their designs and the game side of this demon. I hope you'll come away from this video with a greater understanding about Loki and appreciate them just as much as I do. P.S. No Tom Huddlestone in this video. The great trickster god of the Norse pantheon, Loki, was a devious deity known for his many schemes and deceptions. A shapeshifter, Loki's forms were as varied as the motives for his mischief, which included wealth, women, wisdom, and the sheer pleasure of his dishonesty. With Loki, appearances were never quite what they seemed. While Loki's antics frequently entangled the gods in sticky situations, his tricks often rescued them from troubled times as well. A member of the Aesir tribe of deities, Loki, along with Odin, Thor, and Freya, constituted one of the four ruling deities of Norse thought. Though his mythology consistently overlapped with those of his divine counterparts, Loki differed from them in important ways. Where Thor, Freya, and even Odin strove to impose a righteous order amongst the gods, Loki's erratic behavior called the very nature of his allegiances into question. For example, it was predicted that during Ragnarok, Loki would fight on the side of Jotnar against the gods. Loki was neither for or against the gods. Like the trickster figures of other mythologies, he was neither good nor evil, choosing instead to be a partisan of disorder itself, a figure who tested boundaries and challenged conventions. His chaotic inconsistency reminded believers that the boundaries between good and evil were far more tenuous than they had ever suspected. The name Loki has long been likened to Old Norse logi, meaning fire. While Loki, like fire, was destructive and unpredictable, the similarity between the two words was probably incidental. A newer and more likely etymology traced the name Loki to the Germanic words for knot, loop, or tangle. Such words have a literal connection to the deity. Loki was often depicted as a maker of fish, but also a deeper metaphorical connection. Loki's schemes were like webs that ensnared the unwary. Spiders were referred to as Loki from time to time, as their webs caught unsuspecting victims in a similar manner. Loki was also likely referred to as a knot for his tendency to go against the other gods. Loki's main attributes were his wit and his wile. He seldom engaged in physical combat and as such carried no weapons. He also lacked any well-attested charms or garments. One source, the skald Skapramal, mentioned that Loki possessed a pair of magical shoes. Loki had with him those shoes which he ran through air and over water, but no other sources made such a claim. On one occasion, he borrowed Freya's magical falcon cloak, though he returned it shortly afterward. In spite of his lack of personal accoutrements, Loki had an unusually prominent role in procuring them for other gods. Loki was a prominent shapeshifter amongst the gods. On various occasions, he took the form of a salmon, a flea, a fly, and a mare. He also took the form of human beings, such as an old woman named Thok, who faithfully refused to weep for the fallen Balder. Loki was the son of Farbati, an unspecified Jotun whose name meant cruel striker. His mother was usually called Lofi, though she was also referred to as Null. Loki's brothers were Helblindi and Bylestir, also Jotnar. Loki married the goddess Sigyn, about whom little is known, except that by Loki, she had a son named Nari, or Narfi. Loki also reproduced with his mistress Angerbrada, a Jotun, possibly a troll, who gave birth to 3 children: Hel, who ruled the underworld called Hel, Jormungandr, the sea serpent of Midgard, and the arch-nemesis of Thor, and Fenrir, the massive wolf fated to slay Odin during Ragnarok. Loki gave birth to another of his children on his own. During an escapade in which he had taken the form of a mare, Loki was impregnated by the stallion Svardolfari. Sometime later, Loki bore Sleipnir, the 8-legged horse, who was to become Odin's favorite mount. In the oldest poetic works, such as the Grimace Mall, which had fragments going back to the 8th century, Loki was conspicuously absent. In non-Norse sources of pre-Christian Germanic religion, Loki was once again either absent or presented in a very different manner. Such evidence suggested that Loki was a deity unique to Northern Europe or Scandinavian people. Loki's great mischief always stood front and center in the trickster god's rich mythological tradition. One classic story began with an act of malevolent mischief and ended with the gods receiving a bountiful haul of treasures. The story appeared in Snorri Sturluson's Skald Karpamal of the Prose Edda. One day, Loki was feeling mischievous and decided to cut off all of Sif's hair. Sif was Thor's wife and was known for her beautiful flowing locks of blonde hair. Naturally, when Thor discovered Loki's prank, he flew into a rage and threatened Loki with violence. Desperate to quell Thor's anger, Loki promised to find the Black Elves and have them make a replacement. Wanting to make amends, Loki traveled to Svartalheim, land home to Black Elves, dwarfs, and other Jotnar, Jotunheim that was located deep in the bowels of the earth. There, Loki found the sons of Ivaldi, who were known as the greatest of craftsmen. The sons of Ivaldi soon fashioned a new set of hair for Sif and 2 other marvels. One was a ship called Skidbladnir, which could always find wind when its sail was raised. The ship also folded up into a package so small that it could fit into someone's pocket. The other wonder the dwarves crafted was Gungnir, a spear with an unstoppable thrust. Seeing the wondrous treasures, the dwarves had given Loki an idea. After collecting the treasures from the sons of Ivaldi, Loki sought out the dwarf brothers Broker and Sindri, who were themselves master craftsmen. Loki taunted them, claiming they could never craft anything as perfect as the creations of the sons of Ivaldi. He even wagered his head against the claim. With their pride on the line, the brothers took the wager and set to work on the fort. In an attempt to distract them from their work, Loki transformed himself into a fly and bit the dwarfs repeatedly. Broker and Sindri were unfazed, however, and soon presented Loki with 3 masterworks of their own. The first was Glenenbursti, a golden man-boar that glowed in the dark, ran through water and air, and traveled faster than the horses. The second was Draupnir, a golden ring that sprouted 8 identical rings every 9th night. The third and final item was a warhammer called Mjolnir, which in the hands of Thor became one of the most fabled items in all of Norse lore. Loki returned to Asgard with Broker and bid the gods to judge which of the 6 items was the greatest. Loki gave the hair to Thor so that Sif could once again wear beautiful golden locks. He gave Gungnir to Odin and offered Skidbladnir to Freya. Broker then presented gifts of his own to Freya. He gave the boar to Odin, he gave the reproducing ring, and to Thor, he gave Mjolnir. The gods agreed that Thor's hammer was the finest of all the creations, but when Broker went to claim Thor's head, he found that the god had fled using his own speedy shoes. Thor helped find him, but Broker was unable to claim Thor's head as the trickster god riddled his way out of trouble. The quintessential version of Loki appeared in the poem of the Poetic Edda called the Lokasana, or Loki's Quarrel. The poem began in the halls of the Aegir, a god of the sea, where the gods were feasting and drinking their fill. The assembly heartily praised the industry of Aegir servants, Fimafang and Elder. Loki took offense at this, however, and murdered Fimafang. The gods cursed Loki for his actions and took arms against him, forcing him outside. After a while, Loki returned with the intention of making mischief. I shall go into Aegir's hall, for the feast fain would see. Bale and hatred I bring to the gods, and their meads with venom I mix. What follows is called a flyting, a formalized exchange of insults that was common in Norse practice. In the course of the flyting, Loki hurled insults at most every god in attendance. He accused Frigg, Odin's wife, of adultery with Odin's brothers Vili and Ve, and called Freya a witch, and claims that she had an incestuous romance with her brother Freyr. Boasted that he himself had sired a child with Tyr's wife, and called Thor a coward and Odin a heretic. He ends with the parting shot at Aegir. Ale hast thou brewed, but Aegir now, such feasts shalt thou make no more. O'er all thou hast, which here and within shall play the flickering flames, and thy back shall be burnt with fire. Loki then transformed himself into a salmon and jumped into the river to escape the wrath of the gods. Loki demonstrated a different side of his personality in another episode involving Mjolnir, which appeared in the Thrymskvidia, one of the poems in the Poetic Edda. Early in the poem, Loki was approached by Thor, who had awoken to find his hammer missing. In a suspicious display of helpfulness, Loki offered to locate the hammer. He asked Freya for her magic cloak made of falcon feathers, which would allow him to fly and discover the hammer's location more quickly. Loki then flew to Jotunheim, the land of the Jotnar and one of the 9 worlds in the Norse thought, and approached Thirm, king of the realm of the Jotnar. Thirm declared that he had stolen Mjolnir and had hidden it 8 leagues beneath the earth. Furthermore, he would not return the hammer until he received Freya's hand in marriage. Loki dutifully returned to Asgard and informed the gods of the news. Trouble I have, and tidings as well. Tyrm, king of the giants, keeps thy hammer, and back shall no man bring it, if Freya wins not to be his wife. Amidst the assembled gods, Heimdall spoke up and proposed a ruse, whereby Thor, just as Freya, would go to Jotunheim and reclaim the hammer. Naturally, Thor objected, thinking the ruse would make him look unmanly. Loki urged him to reconsider, however, by highlighting the danger of inaction. Then Loki spoke, the son of Laufey, "Be silent, Thor, and speak not thus, else will the giants in Asgard dwell, if thy hammer is brought not home to thee." Thor saw the wisdom in Loki's words and agreed to the plan. The gods then sprang into action, clothing Thor in a dress with gems, adorning him with Freya's prize necklace, Brinkskamen, and covering his face with a bridal veil. Together with Loki, who was dressed as his maid-servant, Thor traveled to Jotunheim and gained access to Tyrm's hall. An unsuspecting Tyrm welcomed his bride and her servant to his hall, feeding them with food and drink. In his bridal disguise, Thor devoured an entire ox, 8 salmon, and 3 whole casks of mead. When Tyrm raised questions about his bride's odd behavior, Loki stepped in to allay his suspicions. Hard by there sat the serving maid wise. So well she answered the giant's words. From food has Freya 8 nights fasted. So hot was her longing for Jotunheim. Having grown lusty from the mead, Tyr moved in close to Thor for a kiss, but when he lifted the bridal veil, he saw hard and hateful eyes. Again, Tyr commented on the indelicacy of his bride-to-be, and again Thor jumped in to offer an excuse. Hard by there sat the serving maid wise, so well she answered the giant's words. No sleep has Freya for 8 nights found, so hot for her longing for Jotunheim. Ultimately, the ruse worked perfectly. When Tyr brought out the hammer to consecrate the marriage, a laughing Thor snatched it up and slayed the entire wedding party, including Tyr's older sister. The greatest of all the divine shapeshifters, Loki often used his talent in surprising ways. In the book of the Prose Edda, Loki's shapeshifting took a dramatic turn. The tale began when a hill giant and master builder approached the gods and offered to erect an impregnable fortress that would protect the gods from the enemy Jotnar. In exchange, he asked for the sun, the moon, and Freya's hand in marriage. Loki and the gods deliberated, eventually consenting to the bargain on the condition that the builder must complete the fortress by the first day of summer. The builder countered that he must be allowed to use his stallion, a creature named Svadilfari, to help him. Seeing no harm in that stipulation, the gods agreed. With the summer approaching, the fortress was nearly complete. Svadilfari was quite the workhorse and had completed the majority of the work himself. Fretting at the prospect of losing Freya forever to Jotunheimer, the gods decided to sabotage the hill giant's efforts. To this end, Loki transformed himself and paraded in front of the stallion, enticing him with her feminine charms. The work immediately came to a halt, enraging the hill giant. When the Right saw that the work could not be brought to an end, he fell into a giant's fury. The hill giant then attacked the Aesir gods, who called on Thor to assist them. The thunder god, who had been away hunting trolls, returned swiftly and struck the creature where he stood. Loki's romantic dalliance, meanwhile, had taken a serious turn. The horses mated, and Loki, in mare form, became pregnant. According to the Gylfaginning, but Loki had such dealings with Svadilfari that somewhat later he gave birth to a foal, which was a grey and had 8 feet, and this horse is the best among gods and men. This foal was none other than Sleipnir, an 8-legged stallion who quickly became Odin's favorite horse. The Sorlabatur, a 14th century narrative written by Christian priests, contained another story involving Loki as a shapeshifter. This narrative focused on Freya, who was presented as Odin's lover. One night, Freya slipped away and found a cave full of dwarfs. Freya watched them as they crafted a beautiful necklace. Freya desired the necklace badly and asked the dwarfs to name their price. The dwarfs agreed to give it to her on the condition that she have sex with all of them. She did so and received the necklace in return. When Loki discovered her infidelity, he told Odin, who in turn ordered Loki to retrieve the necklace as proof of the affair. Transforming into a flea, Loki slipped into Freya's sealed bedroom tower. When Loki discovered her sleeping, Freya was lying at such an angle that made reaching the necklace impossible. To remedy this, Loki bit Freya on the cheek, causing her to turn over. With Freya's shifted position, Loki was able to unclasp the necklace and deliver it to Odin. In the end, Freya confronted Odin about the theft and revealed his knowledge of her promiscuity. Odin then claimed that he would return the necklace if she could force 2 kings, each ruling 20 kings, to fight an endless war. Each time the kings slayed each other, they would rise to fight again. This would happen for all eternity until a true Christian, Olaf Tryggvason, the Christian king of Norway from 995 to 1000 CE, arrived to end the war. The critical turning point in Loki's relationship with the gods came with his treacherous betrayal of Balder, one of Odin's sons and the half-brother of Thor. While the full story was spread out amongst a number of old sources, the narrative generally remained consistent between them. It all began when Balder was troubled by dreams of his own death, dreams that his mother had as well. Seeking answers, Odin summoned a Volva from the dead. The Volva confirmed Odin's fears and told him that Balder would indeed die, but did not reveal how his death would occur. In her worry, Balder's mother Frigg made all things in existence pledge that they would never harm Balder. All did, except for mistletoe, which Frigg reasoned was so harmless that it could never cause such an injury to her mighty son. When Loki learned of this, he concocted a foul plot. He fashioned a spear made out of mistletoe and gave it to Hoder, the blind son of Odin and Frigg, and brother of Balder. Loki told him to throw the spear at Balder as a joke, and Hoder, not knowing the spear could actually harm Balder, complied. The spear pierced Balder's chest, killing him. In response, Odin had a child with a giant named Rindr. That child, Valdi, grew to manhood in a single day and slayed Hoder for his crime. Loki was not so lucky, as the gods devised a more sinister punishment for him. They pinned Loki against a pile of rocks and bound him there with his entrails of his son Nari. They also set a poisonous snake above his head that would drip venom onto his face and body, causing writhing agonies that shook the foundations of the earth. This was the Norse explanation for earthquakes. In the myth, however, Loki was left in his tortured state until Ragnarok was about to begin. During Ragnarok, the fate of the gods, the sequence of events leading to the death and rebirth of the world, Loki was set to play a decisive role. Ragnarok's beginning would be marked by Loki's release, and the trickster would eventually join the side of the Jotnar in their conflict against the gods. Loki's children, Jormungandr and Fenrir, would also contribute to the demise of the gods. In the end, Loki himself would turn into a seal and battle Heimdall. Both were fated to die in the melee. Now that we've covered the mythology, let's jump into how Loki has affected Megami Tensei. It is no surprise that Loki has made quite the impression on the Megami Tensei franchise. Loki has made appearances in over 30 different titles, ranging from boss battles to simple demon appearances. Let's examine how Loki has played a part in Megaten over the years. In Digital Devil Story, Loki serves as the main antagonist. Akemi Nakajima summons Loki as he wants to get revenge on several students at Jusho High School. Loki seizes control of several students' bodies and murders the students that Nakajima wanted revenge on. Loki then demanded women to be sacrificed to him, eventually allowing him to impregnate Ohara, one of Nakajima's teachers. While Nakajima was no longer watching, Loki practiced teleporting through computer screens and taking physical form, which he eventually uses to rape and mortally injure Yukimo Shirasagi, one of Nakajima's fellow students who happens to be the reincarnation of Izanami. Nakajima attacks Loki with Cerberus and then escapes to Asuka, where he plans to resurrect Yukimo. Loki, angry at being injured and fearful of Nakajima, summoning the other demon lords, which could actually compete with him, follows Nakajima to the tomb with the hopes of killing him. Loki kills Yamatsu Shikome and causes Yukimo's body to rot and attacks Nakajima in an attempt to break his spirit. Izanami appears to fight Loki, but Loki captures her and prepares to rape her. Nakajima manages to summon Hino Kagetsuchi as a sword and uses it to kill Loki. Loki also appears in Megami Tensei as a secondary antagonist. Lucifer resurrects Loki for him to aid him in the taking over of the Earth, and will be confronted in the Valhalla corridor. A wizard named Lor attempted to defeat him but failed. This talisman, obtained from Gar after defeating Medusa, allows Nakajima to properly fight him due to his sealing magic. After defeating him, the talisman will shatter and Nakajima will obtain the Orb of Malice. In Shin Megami Tensei 2, there unfortunately isn't really a lot to talk about. Loki's race as a deity has been subverted in Shin Megami Tensei 2, and he's now a level 49 tyrant. In Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne, he is approached in order to purchase a 1,000 yen bill that the collector mannequin in the Great Underpass of Ginza requests. However, taking advantage of human items' rarity in the Vortex world, he intends to charge the Demi-Fiend 20 million Maka for the bill. Instead, taking advantage of Loki's room's back entrance, the Demi-Fiend will slay his guardian troll and loot Loki's room and several chests of valuables he keeps there. This eventually has some consequences as the player decides to pursue the Labyrinth of Amala quest, as Loki, to compensate for the loss of his valuables, will sell the key he is supposed to guard for more drinking money. In Shin Megami Tensei Imagine, Loki can really only be obtained through a triple fusion. Though he does not normally require a plugin, he appears alongside Hel in the second Home instance, but does not regularly appear as a boss. A variation with a different model was introduced through Summon PG, and later as a plugin acquired through Shinjuku's Gomori in exchange for working for all 5 demons within the Pentalpha system. In Shin Megami Tensei 4, Loki later appears in the challenge quest, punishing the trickster. He has retreated to the world of Infernal Tokyo to set up a domain over Miyachita Park. Loving how chaotic the world is, seeing Flynn, he tells him to scram since he's in a good mood, or he will tear him apart. Realizing the Acer, specifically Heimdall, sent Flynn angers him, leading Loki to curse Heimdall for his persistence. He reveals he planned on relaxing for 100 or more years, but since he's been tracked down, he'll show Heimdall what he's fully capable of and start a war. Loki is shocked that he is defeated by a human and decides to forget his plans for a war. However, he enjoyed the fight against Flynn and didn't expect any surprises in the current world. He admits that surprises like a defeat at human hands is one reason why he could never quit being a god. Loki then laughs as he disappears and the domain vanishes. In Shin Megami Tensei Apocalypse, he appears as a boss in the quest to pursue Hunter Hunters, where he is tricked by a group of Dormars into believing he's part of the divine powers. He reveals after killing the last one that it was a lie and he hated the powers and wished to prevent them from getting the souls they desire. He decides to play with Nanashi in a battle. Upon defeat, hopes to one day fight against him in a joyful match. when the world is set aflame, dying afterwards. Loki can teach Tanashi several spells and Cold War skills through his Demon Whisper. He benefits from learning fire, ice, electricity, and force skills. In Shin Megami Tensei 5, Loki is a demon of the Tyrant race and encountered as a boss in a Goddess Stolen subquest. He has imprisoned Idun in the upper areas of South Shinagawa, and when confronted by the protagonist, states that Idun has been given the important task of producing the golden apples for humanity, which he will then sell to the humans for his own profit. Loki then moves to eliminate the protagonist so that they cannot interfere. Loki notices that the protagonist is in fact an Ahobino after his defeat, leaving behind a golden apple to tempt that protagonist. If the protagonist doesn't eat the apple, Idun will remark that seems the protagonist really didn't follow in Adam's footsteps, but wouldn't necessarily have been angry if he had given into temptation. In Devil Summoner, Soul Hackers, Loki can be found in random encounters in late-game dungeons, usually alone. He can use the Despair Knight skill, which can drain levels of anyone without protection from death magic. In the 3DS remake, a variant Loki is available from Nemchi, unlocked at late stage with the female growth path. He costs 300 D-Souls and uses his artwork from the first Devil Summoner installment. This version has an unusual gimmick. He starts out with very, very low loyalty, but has access to all 4 magical loyalty skills. Once sufficiently bribed with gems, he becomes a very powerful elemental spellcaster, and is a convenient way to pass those skills to a dragon-type Zeed. Due to this form's sly personality, he can also be transformed into a joyous being with mystic change. For Persona 2 Innocent Sin, unlike the rest of the Tower Arcanas, Loki has a normal affinity with everyone. No real significant impact in Persona 2, unfortunately, for this demon. In Persona 3, Loki, when paired with Susanoo, allows the protagonist to use the fusion spell Trickster. His combat traits remain unchanged throughout the subsequent iterations of Persona 3. However, he gets a design update in Persona 3 Portable, where he uses his Devil Summoner Soul Hackers design instead. In Persona 4, Loki appears as the ultimate persona with a full arcana. He is available to be summoned once the protagonist manages to gain access to the normal ending route, which maxes out the full arcana social link. Loki also holds the distinction of being able to learn the most powerful ice elemental skill in the game, Nilfheim. In Persona 4 the Animation, in the True Ending Special, Margaret summons Loki to attack you and help him regain his confidence in fighting against Izanami no Okami. Loki was defeated, though, through the combined efforts of Mikami, Genbu, Mott, and Beelzebub. His appearance in Persona 5 is that he is the true persona of Goro Akechi, manifesting during the second battle with him in Shido's palace. Its ability to induce states of berserk rage is revealed by Akechi to be the source of the strange epidemic of sudden assaults. Usually, this ability is used to discredit Shido's enemies by fabricating scandals upon them, but all such uses happen off-screen. Both on-screen uses are during the battles with Akechi, first to drive Kukulkan and Cerberus berserk as a demonstration, and then Akechi himself before the second battle. It is of the Justice Arcana in Persona 5. In Persona 5 Royal, in my favorite version of Loki, when investigating Muruki's palace in Persona 5 Royal, Akechi exclusively uses Loki, as he no longer needs to hide his true identity. It is the only persona with the skill Leviathan in this boss fight and becomes physical after Akechi rejoins the party. It can later fuse with Robin Hood to form Akechi's third-tier persona Heroward on February 2nd after giving Muruki his calling card. While possessing identical stats and several skills in common, Loki and Robin Hood have key differences. Compared to Robin Hood's focus on bless and curse skills, including instant kills, Loki seemingly specializes in attacks designed to cause as much death and destruction as possible, including Riot Gun, Megadolan, and Leviathan. Another difference between Loki and Robin Hood is that their resistance and weaknesses are reversed. In the Persona 5 animation Dark Sun, Loki appears being summoned by Akechi to induce rage states in both Kukulkan and Cerberus. After they are both defeated, he is summoned by Akechi and clashes with Joker's persona Arsene. However, Loki is eventually overpowered and defeated by Arsene, resulting in Akechi's loss. In Demikids Light and Dark, Loki can perform Ragnarok with Fenrir and has the power Mood Burst. Not too much to cover here, unfortunately. In Devil Summoner, Loki disguises himself as an unnamed human being, known only as the Gigolo by the in-game dialogue boxes. Gigolo's knowledge of the history of the demon world has helped the protagonist from time to time, most notably hinting towards the location of the Devil's Fuge so the protagonist can defeat Velder. Loki has no interest in the throne of Bel and does everything for his own amusement. In the desperate escape ending, Loki appears in his human form and tells off the protagonist for attempting to escape the lockdown instead of fighting for the throne of Bel. If the player failed to save Haru, and thus not needing to fight Belial, he also calls the player a failure for dropping out. After revealing his true form, he attacks the protagonist's party and even creates duplicates of himself to confuse them. In the Kingdom of Sate's ending, Loki also appears while the protagonist faces off against Naoya. Upon seeing the two siblings fight, he finds it fit to join for his own judgment and reveals his true form. In Overclocked, Loki will appear during Naoya Kaido's 8th day route, the King's Decision. In an optional encounter, Loki tricks Honda to luring the protagonist into an ambush in order to amuse himself with the false premise of resurrecting Honda's son. After defeating Loki in any of the above battles, he becomes available for the player to fuse. In Devil Survivor 2, Loki just has a small appearance as an enemy with dialogue. Polaris in his second phase summons him as his incarnation. Minimal involvement here. In Shin Megami Tensei Liberation DX2, there's really no impact in this game other than just a standard demon fusion. Now let's examine how the designs of Loki came into play with the Atlas design team. Now let's go ahead and take a look at two games where the Atlas design team clearly had an idea in mind for Loki. The first game being Shin Megami Tensei Devil Summoner, where Kaniko's design for Loki draws inspiration from the 19th century Danish illustrator Lorenz Frolich's depiction of Loki in the 1895 poem Lokasenna, in which he is seen here quarreling at a table with other Norse gods. The second game being Persona 5. Sojima's design for Persona 5 Loki was modeled after World War I razzle-dazzle warships, and the black and white were to make it so you couldn't really distinguish their loyalties. Loki's horn draws influence from a small snail parasite, designed to make Loki feel sickening with no sense of direction. I hope you guys have enjoyed the video on Loki. They really are one of the more fascinating demons in the series to me, and I feel this video really encapsulates everything that is Loki. If you want to see more of this type of content, please be sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one. Snarf Soldier 17 out.